With the world warming because of fossil fuel emissions caused by humans, scientists warn that urgent action is needed to avoid a climate catastrophe. As world leaders gather at COP26 summit in Glasgow, we are now being joined live from Glasgow by Arise correspondent Leila Johnson-Salami and Philip Crowther. It's a pleasure having both of you there. Leila, we'll come to you first. You'll give us the Nigerian angle to this story about climate change. Nigeria delegates are expected to attend. What hope do we have, to achieve what is expected of us as a country, Leila?
Lovely to speak to you as well, Rafai. So what we have going on at COP26 today and tomorrow is the World Leaders Summit, which is where you have hundreds of heads of states coming together and basically trying to negotiate in terms of climate change. Nigeria's position here is very strong, but I'm going to start off with who we have attending. So we are expecting the President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, to be here with a delegation of about 4 others. This does include the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema. This also includes the Minister of State for Environment, and this also includes the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, retired. Now, Nigeria's position here is that we need money and we need financing for energy transition. As we know, over the past year or two, we've seen several countries here in Europe and the West, including the UK, Germany, and France, saying that they are no longer going to fund fossil fuel-based projects. Now, as we know, we still need fossil fuel-based projects running in Nigeria as we have a huge energy gap. So what you have is a position where we are trying to look for about $400 billion for an energy transition plan up until 2050. So I guess our negotiations are going to be very strong over the next 2 days.
Right, thank you, Leila. My question is for you, Philip. Away from Nigeria for a second and just a general overview, President Biden has been quite critical of Russia and China for basically not showing up, and those are his words. How do you think that will affect COP26, which has really been billed as a now or never last chance saloon?
Well, look, this is the kind of thing that's going to affect a climate conference like this one. And really, this is a conference that doesn't really start only here in Glasgow with world leaders arriving here today. It already started at the weekend, really, with the G20 summit and that absence from Russia and from China. We also have just found out that President Erdogan of Turkey will not be here either. He's usually a very difficult customer when it comes to climate change negotiations. So those absences will be felt. Chief negotiators will still be here on behalf of those countries, so those meetings will happen. But here is really what you're hoping to see happen from this World Leaders Summit that starts today and goes all the way into Tuesday. It's that momentum that world leaders are supposed to create, that impetus for the negotiators to then go ahead and actually come up with an agreement by the end of these 12 days of this climate conference here in Glasgow. That is really why world leaders come here at the start of the summit. They are supposed to really create that mood, and at this point really we're not feeling like it's going to be the most positive mood because of what happened at the G20 in Rome. The communique coming from there had a few strong positions but was very vague in others, and as Leila just mentioned, one of the big things and sticking points in fact right now is that $100 billion per year that is supposed to be made available by developed countries for developing countries. That number has not been reached yet. It was supposed to be available in the year 2020 already. We're now in the year 2021. We might reach that number at some point, but that is really going to be one of the key discussions here during the climate conference, and one of the key discussions that will involve African countries as well.
For you, Leila. Now, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo's stance on Western institutions defunding fossil fuel project and climate financing for Nigeria, the country's stance. Would like your analysis on that as well. You know that President Buhari also says that if Western countries don't wake up at this point, that they run the risk of trying to fix this climate crisis.
The Vice President's stance is a stance whereby he is saying that if we start, or if Western institutions start to defund fossil fuel-based projects, we are only going to increase the inequality gap between developing countries and developed countries more. So what we're going to be seeing a lot of over the next few days is developed nations coming from a stance whereby they are strictly going to be saying that they do not want to fund any more fossil fuel-based projects. And bear in mind that developed countries, including the UK, the EU, Japan, Russia, have contributed the most to carbon emissions over the years. Africa, or sub-Saharan Africa's contribution to carbon emissions in all of time is not even up to 0.5%, or about 0.5%. So it's incomparable. However, we are the ones in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa that are bearing the brunt of climate change. So the position of not just the Vice President, but it's also being echoed by other African leaders like President Cyril Ramaphosa in South Africa, who said that if they do want to come and talk, if Western countries do want to come and talk about defunding fossil fuel projects, let them at least commit to the climate financing of $100 billion a year first, and then we can talk. So you can see that people are going to be going head to head with one another over the next 2 days, and we can only wait to see what the outcome of that is going to be. But Nigeria has drawn up a plan, a cost plan of about $400 billion, as I mentioned, and not many African nations so far have drawn up a plan to actually show what they need to transition away from fossil fuel projects. So that should put us in quite a strong position. However, we were also hoping that the climate change bill would have been passed into law or signed by President Buhari before this conference actually started. Even though it's been passed by the National Assembly, the president is yet to sign that, and that is legal backing for climate change implementation that we need in Nigeria, and it would have given us more of a stronghold. However, like I said, we have to wait and see what we expect today and tomorrow, what we can expect today and tomorrow.
You know, when you mentioned that $100 billion number, that is supposed to be available straight away, but you're also hearing a lot of developing countries already saying that that number has to be way, way higher in the future. So that is something that's going to be discussed at length here. The world is really trying to catch up with a number that had been agreed upon in Paris at the Climate Change Conference in 2015 at COP21. And of course, things have moved on since then.
All right, Philip, let me come to you here and talk about the politicking that will go on in the room, because a lot of Western countries are talking about net zero. Britain has said it's going to tax its citizens to be able to achieve net zero in about 2050. But you have heavy heaters when it comes to coal. Countries like India. India, when you go across the spread of India, it's coal country big time. That's the biggest source of fuel out of India. I mean, how do you tell people like Narendra Modi that there is something called net zero and it's going to happen in the next 40 years when he says, I am just achieving 6-7% growth and coal is fueling my growth?
Yeah, you're right to mention a few countries that will not necessarily sign up to that pledge to come to net zero, is what it's called, net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. It's one of the big goals from the Paris Climate Conference already in the year 2015 that really this climate conference is building on, essentially. So you've got most countries agreeing to do whatever they can on a national level to get to that position, and that's where these national statements come in that we're going to be seeing here today and tomorrow from those world leaders. A lot of them we already have. We already know what the plans are for each country to get to that limit of carbon emissions that will then hopefully lead to the world to not warm up further than 1.5 degrees Celsius or a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius during this century, which seems unlikely at this point. But back to individual countries' contributions, we still expect some big announcements here today from those countries who haven't published their plans yet, and that includes India, for example. We don't have that plan yet at this point, and some of them really don't fit in with what the United Nations want here and what people want here at this climate conference. For example, China wants to become carbon neutral by the year 2060, and according to experts here, according to pretty much everybody here, that's simply not good enough. And of course, we also mentioned that the Chinese President Xi Jinping is not here, meaning negotiations with China will be that little bit more difficult.
They will indeed. Now, Leila, you just mentioned the South African preconditions to negotiation. Is that the general position African countries hold, or are there divergent views across the continent?
Absolutely, Tundun. This does seem to be a voice that's echoed across Africa right now, from Gabon, who are coming in with a stronghold of saying we need funding because we have the carbon sinks that are storing your carbon, to Nigeria, who is coming in and saying we've updated our nationally determined contributions, and even though we're saying that, okay, we're going to reduce our carbon emissions by 20% by 2030. In 2015, we had said that with the help of international climate financing, that could be 45%. But now we're saying that that could be 47%. So what you see is a stance from African countries whereby it's going to be very hard to convince African countries or African nations to immediately diverge from fossil fuel energy. It simply just isn't possible. We need something more sustainable, something that works for Africa. And that is what African leaders are looking to come to the table with. And I guess that gives Africa a stronger position, because it is as though Africa right now does have one voice, or shall I say sub-Saharan Africa does have one voice at this conference.
Well, very well said, guys. Away from Africa, I just wanted to ask you, Leila, in particular, Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who I am looking forward to. I mean, I'm sure you are also looking forward to her speech. She said that she's not interested in, being the center of attention at this summit. I'd like to know what your thoughts are and what you'll be expecting from her.
What I'll be expecting from Greta Thunberg is for her to come out and have a very strong position with regards to the reality of the world that we are living in. This is a code red for humanity, as the United Nations has already told us. And you see a lot of climate activists as people who genuinely do not give up. I mean, the day that I got to the UK, climate activists had glued their hands to the floor of the ground around Heathrow Airport. Climate activists are standing strong because they genuinely believe that this is the last chance for us to save the world. And I don't expect Greta to come and say anything less. We expect a very powerful speech from her, one that's going to move not just a lot of world leaders here, but all of us across the globe. And not just Greta, but other climate activists that we're going to be seeing and hearing from over the next few days. They are driven, they have so much energy in them, and they are not going to give up. I met two men yesterday who had walked 450 kilometers from Holland to Scotland for this conference. Climate activists are people who genuinely walk the walk and talk the talk. We've seen it in Greta over the past few years, and I do believe that she's going to come here with possibly her strongest speech yet.
We always expect a stirring call to action
Yes.
from her. Thank you so much for your time this morning.